They pulled over a tired black woman in a rental car, laughed at her, dismissed every word she said until they found out she was a sitting U.S. Congresswoman. The rain had just started, a thin, irritating drizzle, the kind that slicks your windshield but doesn't count as real rain. It was a little after 6 a.m. when Renitra Colburn pulled out of the rental lot near Abraham Lincoln Capitol Airport. She had flown the red-eye from D.C., still wearing a soft navy sweater, black joggers, and worn Adidas sneakers. Her hair was clipped back, face bare, no makeup, no earrings, just reading glasses on her nose, and a canvas tote full of briefing folders riding shotgun. It had been a long week, late-night floor votes, tense committee sessions, and now she was in Springfield, Illinois, to speak at a veterans housing forum she had helped organize with local leaders. Her assistant had offered to send a car, but Renitra preferred driving herself when she could. She always said it helped her breathe. 8 minutes into the drive, somewhere along a stretch of farmland near Toronto Road, she noticed the cruiser behind her. No sirens, no lights, just following. She eased into the right lane, expecting it to pass. It didn't. Instead, the lights flashed. Renitra exhaled, calmly pulled to the shoulder, and shifted into park. She wasn't speeding. She hadn't missed a sign. The rental was spotless and brand new. Still, here she was, hands on the wheel, eyes on the mirror. 2 officers stepped out. One approached her window, tall, mid-40s, buzz-cut, broad shoulders. The other lingered near the back, hand resting on his belt. The first one tapped the glass. She rolled it halfway. "License and registration," he said flatly. "Sure," she answered calmly. "This is a rental. I've got the agreement in the glove box. Would you like me to grab it?" He didn't respond, just stared. "You in a hurry to be somewhere?" he asked. "I have a speaking engagement in Springfield. A community—" He cut her off. "Ma'am, I didn't ask for your schedule." She stayed steady, turned to her tote bag, slowly pulled out her wallet, handed him her license, then carefully reached for the rental papers in the glove box. Behind her, the second officer muttered, not realizing his mic was hot. "Got some attitude on her." The first one smirked. "Probably headed to one of those protest panels or something. They love doing those at the Marriott." She heard every word, didn't flinch, but her heart skipped. "I'm Representative Renitra Colburn," she said calmly. "I was invited by the Springfield Veterans Outreach Network." The first officer blinked. "Representative of what?" "The United States Congress," she replied. "Illinois 4th District." He laughed, like she'd just claimed she played center field for the Cubs. "Right," he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Congress. Got it." He didn't even glance at her license, just turned and walked away. Inside the car, her fingers stayed curled around the steering wheel. This wasn't new, not really, but it was rare for someone to say the quiet part out loud. She heard a chuckle from their cruiser, something about fancy D.C. talk. Then, the car doors shut and silence returned. She glanced at the clock, 6:09 a.m. She was supposed to be on stage at 7:30. If they ran her info, this could be over in 10 minutes. But she knew better. What they didn't know was about to hit them harder than they could have imagined. Inside the cruiser, Deputy Brent Orville stared at her license. His partner, Jason Kroll, flipped through the rental agreement. "Renitra Colburn," Brent muttered. "Name sounds made up." Jason snorted. "What kind of first name is that anyway? Sounds like one of those folks always trying to prove something." They laughed, but it felt hollow, because Brent was starting to feel something strange. It wasn't fear, not yet, but discomfort. The way she had looked at him, calm, direct, unshaken, like she'd seen this play out before. He looked back at the license photo. Same glasses, same quiet strength. "You want to run this?" he asked. Jason shrugged. "Might as well. If she's lying, she's got guts." Back in her car, Renitra hadn't moved. Phone buzzed in her tote. She ignored it. No sudden movements. No excuses. 3 minutes passed. 4. Then Brent got out of the cruiser, started walking toward her. Halfway. Stopped. Turned around. He didn't know what he was planning to say, but something about her silence unsettled him. "You said you're a what?" he called out. She rolled her window down. A member of the U.S. House of Representatives. He smirked again. You carry a badge for that? No, but my name's on legislation you've probably never read. Jason chuckled from the car. She's got jokes. Brent stepped closer. You look real comfortable for someone pulled over. I have no reason to be nervous, she said, voice firm, unless you give me one. That hit. Not loud, but sharp. What are you doing out here again? He asked. Speaking at a housing forum for veterans, she replied, same calm tone. He looked at the tote on her seat, folders stamped with the seal of the U.S. House of Representatives. Jason's voice crackled over the radio. Dispatch is running her now. Brent started walking back, slower this time, and Renitra still didn't blink, because she wasn't thinking about herself anymore. She was thinking about every kid from Garfield Ridge who got pulled over for matching a description. Every tired mom in Belleville who sat still in a car while officers circled her like she didn't belong. She wasn't the exception, just the one with a camera pointed her way this time. Then, Jason's voice again. You're not gonna believe this. Brent picked up the radio. Brent's stomach dropped. He looked back at her car. She hadn't moved. Jason stepped out, holding up a phone screen. There's a photo of her. Same glasses. Brent muttered under his breath. Shit. Jason exhaled. We're on camera, man. Yeah, Brent said. I know. He walked back, slower now, voice softer. Ma'am, we just got confirmation. Thank you for your patience. Renitra didn't respond. No thanks, no anger, just silence. If there was any misunderstanding, we apologize. You're free to go. Still, she said nothing. She didn't ask for an apology. She didn't reach for her phone. She just looked at them, both of them, with a stillness that said everything. They turned away first. Neither asked her name. Before she was Congresswoman Colburn, she was just Renitra, a girl from 91st Street in Roseland, raised in a house where the windows rattled when the Metro passed, where corner stores locked everything behind glass. She'd been asking questions her whole life. Why did the bus stop 3 blocks short of her neighborhood? Why did the cops always look angry? Why did her friend's mom cry even after getting promoted? Her parents worked hard, believed in dignity, in education. She never asked for anything she wasn't willing to earn. By the time she hit 40, people called her the closer. Not because she was loud, but because she finished things. And months before this stop, she'd introduced a bill that would require transparency in traffic stops. Race, duration, officer conduct. She never imagined she'd live out the very bill she wrote. But now, on the side of a rural Illinois road, it all pressed down on her like quiet weight. Because this wasn't about one bad cop. It was about the story people tell themselves when they look at someone like her. Inside the cruiser, Brent was sweating. Even though the AC read 68 degrees, he tapped her license against his leg. Dry throat, heavy gut. Jason leaned over. You saw her bio, right? Security clearance, official car. She's the real deal. Brent nodded slowly. She gave me her license, told the truth. Yeah, Jason said, and we laughed in her face. Neither spoke. Brent stepped out again, walked slower this time. Renitra rolled her window down before he reached it. Is there a reason I'm still being detained? He hesitated. We've verified your credentials. You're free to go, Representative Colburn. She didn't smile, didn't nod, didn't spit venom either, just looked at him, cataloging everything. He turned to walk away, then stopped. We didn't know who you were. She tilted her head slightly. You still don't? Then she rolled the window up. She reached into the glove box, not for ID, but for a folded event flyer, unfolded it in her lap. Across the top, bold print read, Springfield Veterans Housing Forum guest speaker, Congresswoman Renitra Colburn. The truth had been within reach the whole time. They just never asked. As she pulled away, I really thought she was bluffing. Brent didn't respond, because the weight in his chest wasn't about a badge, it was about what they'd almost gotten away with, if not for a Google search. But she didn't need to say a word, because as the officer said it, the dashboard monitor blinked red. Recording saved. And in that moment, the irony filled the silence. The body cams had been on the entire time. The sarcasm, the mocking, the refusal to believe her, the crude assumptions about where she was going, all of it now part of public record, whether they liked it or not. That's when things started to unravel. Renitra didn't cry when she pulled into the Springfield Civic Center's parking lot. She didn't call her aide, didn't tweet, didn't post a thing. She just parked the car, turned off the ignition, and sat still. For 21 minutes, she had been treated like a lie, a threat in sneakers, a profile that didn't match the badge in their minds. Now she was supposed to walk into a hall full of veterans, nonprofit leaders, and city officials, and talk about housing, like nothing had happened. She reached into her tote, pulled out her compact mirror, dabbed her face gently. Her reflection stared back, calm, controlled, at least on the outside. Inside, she felt the weight of the pause, that space between knowing exactly who you are and watching someone else refuse to see it. 7:12 a.m. She stepped out of the car. Inside, chairs had been lined in neat rows. Coffee urns steamed, packets of creamer in bowls, the usual setup. A man with a clipboard rushed over. "Congresswoman Colburn, we were worried you missed your flight." She offered a faint smile. "Traffic delay." He walked her to the podium, thanked her, handed her the mic. The room quieted. Veterans filled the chairs, most in their 50s or 60s. A few wore hats or vests with patches bearing names of lost friends. Renitra looked at them and made a decision. She didn't give the version of the speech she'd prepared, not the one on paper, not the one her staff had printed. She told them the truth, not to shock, not to perform, just the facts. "I landed at the airport around 6:20. I was pulled over just before 6:30. I gave my license, my rental papers. I was asked why I was in town. I answered. I was mocked, dismissed. They didn't ask my name until after they'd already confirmed it on a screen." Silence. No gasps, no murmurs, just stillness, the kind that speaks respect. She looked across the room again. Every time someone makes a judgment before asking who you are, they risk missing everything that matters. The badge I carried didn't protect me. The law I helped write didn't shield me. The only thing that changed their minds was a database. Someone stood up, an older black veteran in a worn leather jacket. "They think they see everything when they see us." It's about who gets presumed guilty before a word is spoken. And if it can happen to someone standing at this podium, she let it trail off. She didn't need to finish the sentence. They already knew. After the event, people quietly lined up to shake her hand. Some whispered thank yous. One woman cried softly, gripping Renitra's arm like it held a truth too heavy to carry alone. It wasn't the speech she'd planned, but it was the one the room needed. Outside, the rain had stopped. Traffic flowed like any normal day. But at the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office, nothing was normal. Because around 9 a.m., a local blogger posted a 47-second clip from a body cam, footage someone had leaked anonymously. The video showed it all: a chuckling deputy, a dismissive smirk, and a calm voice saying, "I'm a member of the U.S. House of Representatives." By noon, the clip had gone viral. By 3 p.m., it had 40,000 shares. By dinner time, it was on cable news. Her face was everywhere. Her words became headlines. But the line that stuck with people—
They didn't ask who I was. They assumed who I couldn't be.
It wasn't just the video that caught fire. It was the silence within it. The clip first hit Twitter at 9 a.m., screen recorded from a desktop, shaky hands, a coffee mug in the reflection. The moment everyone latched onto. "Got some attitude on her," the officer says. "Probably headed to one of those protest panels." The other laughs. And then, "I'm a member of the U.S. House of Representatives." Silence. Long, heavy, deafening. No shouting, no accusation, just truth. Clear, raw, and undeniable. Reactions exploded. Retweets, quote tweets, anger, disbelief.
"This is what black women go through even in office. No apology in the world can make this right."
Calls came in from local news, then state, then national reporters. Renitra didn't answer. Not yet. She wasn't ready, not as a public official, not as a victim, not even as a woman who had been deeply humiliated. By 2:30 p.m., the sheriff's office had no choice. Sheriff Ray Dawn stepped up in front of the courthouse, navy windbreaker zipped to his neck, eyes flat.
"We are reviewing the situation,"
he said.
"The deputies have been temporarily reassigned. We ask for patience and privacy for all involved."
No apology, no mention of who she was, no acknowledgement of what the entire country had now seen. But minutes later, in front of the Capitol reflecting pool in Washington, D.C., Renitra spoke. Her voice didn't rise. She didn't cry. Hair tied back, sunglasses tucked into her collar, tan blazer, flat shoes. Nothing dramatic. Just presence.
I wasn't going to say anything,
She began.
because I've learned over time that some people only hear what they're ready to hear. But silence in this case would be complicity.
The press leaned in.
They didn't ask who I was. They assumed who I couldn't be.
That line. It hit different. Not because it was clever, not because it was crafted, but because it came from someone who had swallowed disrespect too many times and decided not to digest it this time. By nightfall, it was a graphic, a quote, a rallying cry. Teachers discussed it in classrooms. People whispered it in checkout lines. She didn't scream, one woman tweeted. She didn't make a scene. She just let the truth speak for itself. The footage wasn't the most violent example of injustice, but it was ordinary. It showed how power can stare straight at your credentials and choose not to see them. The sheriff's office started receiving hundreds of calls. By Friday, Springfield residents gathered outside the courthouse with screenshots of Renitra's bio and a banner that read, "Respect has no uniform." A local high school's civics class submitted a letter calling for a full review of traffic stop procedures. Renitra hadn't asked for any of it. She hadn't tried to become a symbol, but people saw her, truly saw her, not as a trending name, not as a talking point, but as a woman who answered disrespect with discipline, bigotry with composure. By Saturday, the sheriff's office had disabled all comment sections. Didn't help. Emails flooded in. Letters, too, some handwritten. One from a Korean War veteran in Kansas simply read, "You made me embarrassed to wear a uniform today." The two deputies, Brent Orville and Jason Krall, were placed on unpaid administrative leave. The official statement said, "Pending review." But the public knew better. Protesters held signs, "Dignity is not a threat. Assumption is not protocol." Back in her modest hotel room, Renitra watched the news coverage, muted. She didn't need the volume. She could read their faces. Some called it a misunderstanding. Others tried to soften it. But the people, they named it for what it was, a pattern, not a mistake. Her phone buzzed constantly. Friends, colleagues, lawmakers, even a few White House staffers. She appreciated the messages, didn't answer most of them, because she needed time to reflect on what it meant. That her story only mattered once people knew her name. That afternoon, her chief of staff, Tanya, arrived, brought a change of clothes and a quiet hug. "You okay?" Tanya asked softly. Renitra stared at the screen. "No, but I'm clear." Tanya nodded. "They're asking if you'll do Face the Nation, or maybe Morning Joe Monday." Renitra leaned back. "I'll talk, but not to spin this." Tanya smirked. "You've never spun anything in your life." They sat in silence. "I didn't even flinch," Renitra whispered, "and they still looked at me like I didn't belong." Tanya looked over. "That's because they weren't looking at you. They were looking through you, hoping you'd disappear if they stared long enough." Renitra let the silence answer. Later that evening, her official statement was released. "I did not demand a consequence. I expect accountability. I did not ask for recognition. I asked to be heard." The line went viral. A retired judge wrote an open letter. When Congress has to carry her ID twice. But the real momentum came from the people. Parents, teachers, veterans, students, stories poured out. Stops that never made the news, names that didn't trend, dashcam clips, shaky cell phone footage, each one carrying the same quiet scream, "See me before you erase me." And still, through all of it, Renitra never made herself the center. On a Sunday live stream, she looked directly into the camera and said, "I'm not the exception. I'm just the one with receipts and a microphone. And they didn't know either of those things when they pulled me over." That sentence would echo louder than anything else. And by Monday morning, the first resignation came in. When accountability finally knocks, it's not always loud. Sometimes it sounds like a shrug being forced into silence by the weight of undeniable truth. That's what this was. A shrug, the kind that follows misconduct until cameras and public pressure make that shrug impossible. But beneath the backlash and headlines, something else started taking shape. Nearby cities began reviewing their own procedures. The mayor of Peoria rolled out a new mandate. Every officer must state the reason for a stop, on record, immediately. No exceptions. St. Louis County launched an anonymous reporting line. Even small towns were quietly asking big questions. These changes didn't make national headlines, but Renitra noticed. She saw every ripple. And when a local reporter asked her what she thought, she gave a response that stuck. "I'm not here to ruin careers. I'm here to fix conditions." That mattered, because it wasn't revenge she wanted. It was recognition. Not of her title, not of her resume, but of her humanity, the kind that shouldn't require credentials. This wasn't an isolated moment. It was a mirror. Exactly 1 week after the footage broke, Renitra stood before the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Civil Rights, not as a victim, not as a headline, but as a legislator. She carried a manila folder, though she barely looked at it. The room was packed, cameras ready, lawmakers leaned forward. This hearing hadn't been on the calendar, it was added late because the country was still talking, and Congress knew silence wouldn't cut it. When her 5 minutes came, she didn't rehearse, she didn't posture. She told the story, plain, precise. "I didn't flash a badge, I didn't raise my voice, I didn't tell them who I was because they never asked." She walked them through it, what was said, what wasn't, how long she sat there, fully aware that her credentials meant nothing if they didn't bother to check. Then she pivoted. "Earlier this year, I introduced a bill, the Community Stop Transparency Act. It was built on data, not anecdotes. Now I have both." She locked eyes with the room. "We cannot legislate dignity, but we can legislate process." It didn't need to. She held the room steady, like she held her steering wheel that morning. Later that afternoon, she stepped into the corridor. Reporters swarmed. She gave them 5 minutes. "Congresswoman, are you concerned your experience will be politicized?" She didn't flinch. "Everything gets politicized, but this is personal." Another asked, "Do you think your position is what saved you?" She paused. "No. What saved me was that they ran my name. What should have saved me was that I told the truth. My title came last. It shouldn't have had to." "Do you think this moment changes the conversation?" someone asked. She nodded. "I think it reminds people that injustice doesn't ask what seat you hold. It just asks what you look like and decides everything else from there." The next morning, an unexpected voice joined hers. Retired Senator Leland Moss, a conservative from Missouri, wrote an op-ed in a Midwest paper. In it, he confessed that decades ago, a young black state representative was questioned by Capitol Security every single morning for a year. "I was too afraid to speak up back then," he wrote. "I won't make that mistake again." His words surprised people. So did others. A sheriff in rural Nebraska voiced public support for Renitra's bill. A Republican mayor in Ohio asked for a draft. Even a few critics, who had first brushed off the incident as overblown, admitted the footage shook them. Momentum was building, not in a flash, but in a steady, undeniable shift. Because this wasn't just about a traffic stop anymore. It was about assumptions, how fast people make them, and how long they go unchallenged. It was about the difference between being heard and being believed. And through it all, Renitra kept showing up. Not as a victim, not as a spectacle, but as a steward of a moment that had become bigger than her. Police departments began using her footage in training seminars. Community leaders quoted her in local meetings. She didn't plan to become a face for reform. but she wasn't running from it either. On a podcast weeks later, the host asked, "What gave you the strength to stay so calm in that car?" Her answer was simple. "I've been practicing that silence since I was 12. Because the real question was never who is she, it was how many more. 2 months after the stop, Renitra returned to Springfield, this time by invitation, to accept a community service award. The event was quiet, folding chairs, boxed lunches, nothing flashy, just how she liked it. She didn't bring a team, just her cousin Gerald from Rockford and Tanya, her steady aide and friend. When the MC introduced her, the crowd clapped, not wildly, but with something deeper. Respect. Because she hadn't just endured something, she'd done something with it. Renitra stepped up, smiled. "Thank you. It's good to be back under better circumstances." Light laughter, a few nods. But it wasn't new. The only new part was that someone pressed record. She scanned the room. "I've lived this story 100 different ways. At the mall, at the bank, in meetings where someone assumes I'm the assistant instead of the guest of honor. And every time the same silent question fills the room. Who do you think you are?" She paused. "I never answer that question for them. I answer it for me, and I know exactly who I am." That line stayed with people. After the speech, a teenage girl approached her with her mother. "My teacher made us watch your video," she said. "We had to write a paper on it." Renitra smiled. "What did you write?" The girl shrugged. "That I hope I can stay that calm if someone ever talks to me like that, but I don't know if I could." Renitra looked at her, steady. "You don't always have to be calm, you just have to be clear. Calm helps them. Clarity protects you." The girl's eyes lit up. That was it. They had expected outrage, expected a lawsuit, expected chaos. What they got was a woman who turned disrespect into a blueprint. She didn't respond for cameras. She responded for the next person. For the woman pulled over with a toddler in the back seat. For the college intern no one thinks is the candidate. For the black veteran in his Sunday best being asked what store he works at. She built it for them. Renitra didn't walk away bitter. She walked away fueled. 2 weeks after the ceremony, her bill advanced out of committee. The Community Stop Transparency Act was moving forward. Slowly, but moving. A new provision required all departments receiving federal funding to release body cam footage within 7 days of a request. Another provision created a national database for repeated complaints against officers, even the minor ones. Maybe it wouldn't pass this session, maybe not the next, but it was real now. Filed, visible, alive. And for Renitra, that was the point. Not to punish, but to prevent. Not to shame, but to shift how power moves in the quiet, invisible moments. She never claimed perfection, but this wasn't about mistakes. It was about choices, theirs and hers. And she chose, over and over again, not to shrink, not for comfort, not for peace, not even for safety. She took the story handed to her and handed it back rewritten, reframed, and filled with mirrors. So when people ask her what the moral of the story is, she doesn't quote anyone, doesn't hand them a slogan. She simply says, ask before you assume, listen before you speak, see before you judge. And then she adds, because silence never saved anyone, but truth just might.